Call this committee meeting to order. A building codes committee. We present all three members, Mr. Matney, Mr. Allgood, myself, Mr. Duncan, Ms. Miller. I continue to appreciate more and more every day. All right. First things is our public comment. Do we have anybody online? Any public comment? All right. Moving on, reading and approval of minutes. Committee.
Motion to approve as submitted.
Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those none. Moving on. Reports and communications from city officers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. And I'm glad that Mr. Eskridge is here tonight because he's always asking me what's going up where. So I'm going to tell them all right now what's going up where. So pay attention. No, I do want to give you some highlights from this last month. True Liant Federal Credit Union received their building permit for their project at 513 North Main Street. So you'll see that start coming out of the ground at some point. Meritage Homes has received a building permit for our new office. They're renovating some existing space in Brookfield Office Park, so they're going to be moving an office in there. Lely plus Coco Wine Bar and Clothing Boutique will be coming to Bridgeway Station. They received a building permit to start upfitting a space that they're going to be moving into there. Jeremiah's Italian Ice recently obtained their business license and are about to open their doors at Bridgeway Station. And we've had 15 new businesses move into the city during the month of March. And lastly, I do want to just touch briefly on at our last council meeting, there were questions about construction debris and dust going on. And I think I don't know that there was too much discussion about that here, but a little bit. And just wanted to bring to your attention to let you know, we don't have any specific standards in our codes about construction debris or dust, but we do generally follow up when we get complaints to relay those on to the builders to let them know about it. Most often they will bring out a water truck if they don't already have one on site and wet it down to help with that stuff. So that's kind of how it goes. And I just wanted to fill you in a little bit to let you know about that. That's the report I have for you tonight. Let me know if you have any questions.
Sir, any questions from the committee? Mr. Auger.
Thank you. So when it comes to the dust that was brought up at the last council meeting, there are no regulations that require water trucks?
Not that the city has. I haven't looked to see if there's state laws or anything about that, but I could imagine that would be a very difficult thing to measure if there were.
Okay.
Probably kind of like lighting.
We went down that road before too. No, that's good to know because I think there's an idea in the community that there are regulations regarding the use of water trucks. So that's good to know. The other question that I had is with the True Liant building, do we know at this point whether or not that road is going to be constructed?
So you may recall that initially kind of started out with a representative for the property behind, a broker, his name Sebastian Carter, as presenting that road in conjunction with the rezoning that they were seeking at the time for the townhomes they wanted to build on the back piece. Sebastian is still working on that project. In fact, it was recently submitted to the Subdivision Advisory Committee for Greenville County. We're expecting that we'll probably receive the application for that subdivision soon for it to be reviewed by staff, then to go to the Planning Commission. But interestingly enough, True Liant has inquired a little bit more about the road and the ability of them to just do it without waiting for the townhome project by Sebastian. I haven't seen anything new yet come from their engineers for True Liant, but that may also be coming. All that to say that we'll definitely have to go in as part of the townhome project, but True Liant may want to just bite it off themselves if they get the feeling that that townhome project is lagging more than it needs to.
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to add to that real quick that in addition to what David said, but the drawings that we continue to see either related to the subdivision or inquiries from the engineers or True Reliant all point to the road realignment. So we haven't seen anything at this point that would make us think that it wasn't going to happen, but we also haven't seen specific plans at an approval level that show that are for the road specifically. So we think it's going to go in, but we just can't say a definitive yes right this second.
And I've seen that in the drawings and everything as well. But of course, as construction starts taking place on there, I know that the residents in the neighborhood behind it are still wondering what's going to happen to their signs and lovely bushes that they planted many, many years ago. So I know that will be impacted by that road.
Yeah,
We will-
and we've made a note to make sure that at least when that comes up as part of the subdivision, to make sure that's also addressed.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
All right. Unfinished business. We've got none. On to new business. Mr. Deerhog, our first one is an ordinance for annexation of the property owned by Mr. Bond Jr. at 2 Woodhedge Court.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if Mr. Duncan will pull up the slides here, if you go down to the first map. So here we go. That's good. This is annexation request for property at 2 Woodhedge Court. You can maybe detect from the map that's being displayed right now that all of Woodhedge Court is in the city with the exception of this first lot on the corner. In fact, this lot's part of a relatively small donut hole inside the city. The reason this property is requested to come into the city is they had been recipients of garbage service by the city, only for the Public Works Department to realize recently they're not in the city. So that service was taken away and they'd like it back. So they inquired about annexing into the city, and we have for you their petition to present tonight.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the committee? Comments, thoughts? All right, do we have a motion? Any?
Moved forward to full council with recommendation of approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Moving on. New business 2 is an amendment to the Mauldin zoning ordinance, removing certain uses, those allowed in S1 and I1 zoning districts.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been brought to your attention before last month. You'll go to the next slide here, Mr. Duncan. We recently took this ordinance to the Planning Commission this past month and let them review it and give their feedback. They voted unanimously to recommend approval of this ordinance. What this ordinance is there are certain institutional uses that the city does allow in our S1 and I1 districts. And these are districts that are so typically associated with economic development and represent employment centers. And as we've been experiencing recently, we're seeing new pressures, new desires for institutions to move into these economic development areas. And so in consideration of preventing these economic development centers from being too overrun with institutional uses, this ordinance before you tonight will eliminate some of those institutional uses as allowed in the S1 and I1 districts. So in the next slide, it shows you here which ones are being taken out of those districts as allowed by this ordinance. Just for summary, that includes cemeteries, funeral homes, churches, colleges and universities, grade schools, and social assistance services.
Sir, any questions from committee? Mr. Allgood.
Thank you. Can you explain what C1 and C2 would be? I obviously know that it says S1 and I1, but for our dear friends that are in the cemetery and funeral home business, I'm curious as to what those classifications are for them.
Yeah, so the C1 district is a kind of a light commercial district. It's sometimes often found on the peripheral edges of neighborhoods or kind of like maybe at the end of a neighborhood where it meets Main Street or something like that. And C2 is our general commercial district that's pretty prevalent along Main Street and Butler in our main commercial corridors. Uh, Typically, probably where we would expect to see something like a cemetery is at a church and would go along with that and the zoning that they have for the church as an accessory use.
Because looking at the ones that we are eliminating, those are the only two where it would knock them down to just one or two classes. Everybody else would still be able to maintain other classifications and still be able to move into our city. So my only other question that I would have is just to make sure, have there been any recent inquiries that would prohibit someone from moving into our city by making this decision?
Not any that are currently that we're aware of. I'll say that much. We know we've had the couple in Brookfield Park recently that have been approved, but nothing new since those.
New sense those.
And I'll add one more thing as we're taking a look at the zoning ordinance. We recognize there's probably some new districts we need to consider integrating into our ordinance, and certainly an institutional type district would make a lot of sense and probably will be something you'll be seeing in the near future.
I answered the question I had, so thank you. Mr. Matt, the pleasure committee here.
I'll make a motion to forward this on to full council as presented.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none. And our last one, an amendment to the Mauldin zoning ordinance establishing regulations for non-conforming uses, structures, sites, lots, and
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what you have tonight is kind of a little mini overhaul on our nonconformities code in the zoning ordinance. There's really three main things that are behind this text amendment that are before you tonight. The first is to take it out of obscurity, if you will. It's in the requirements and standards we have for nonconforming uses and structures are kind of tucked in and hidden away in one of our sections of the zoning ordinance. So this text amendment tonight will pull them out into their own article, so they're a lot easier to find. Secondly, we have the Building a Better Butler Road project that's going to be occurring over the next several years. And as that project affects property owners along the way, especially as it is taking right of way, or I should say acquiring right of way from some of the existing properties on there, along there, you're going to see a lot of lots and sites come non-conforming because either they've lost land or lost parking spaces. And so some of the changes in this ordinance are going to help them out. So like if their sign all of a sudden becomes non-conforming, it allows them to move their sign if it's in an area that was part of their lot that's being taken for right of way, or if the sign is still going to be in their lot, maybe it doesn't meet the new setback requirement, allows them to kind of keep that and recognizes that better than our current code as a grandfathered sign. As far as businesses that have parking lots and stuff that'll be affected, it will still recognize them as grandfathered in business and will allow them to still make other improvements to their properties and to their sites without being handcuffed by some of the nonconformities requirements that we currently have. And then the third aspect of this is actually to make sure that we're clarifying our language as it relates to some of our existing non-conforming businesses. Why this is kind of coming up right now is we know there's some interest in a non-conforming business in our central redevelopment district. And while at the end of the day, the language in the current ordinance should protect the city from seeing that non-conforming use expanded. This will make that clear and we'll clean up the language so it is clear and we don't have to say should, but it does. So that's the impetus behind what you're reviewing tonight. If you'd like me to go into detail about the actual specific changes to the standards, I'm prepared to do that. But if you're good enough with this overview, that's the report I have for you at this time. Oh, this did go to the Planning Commission, by the way, last week as well, and it got a recommendation of approval by unanimous vote.
I did also notice there was a public hearing, which was supposedly held today as well. I got it into these notes.
It was at the Planning Commission meeting, and there was a remark in support of the ordinance there. Someone who is associated with the church down the street here.
Just noticed it said April 1st, which if I,
Oh, probably a typo in my report. Sorry about that.
the one time.
You caught it. That was a test.
Questions, discussion? Mr. Allgood.
You already caught the typo. The two questions that I had, you mentioned in the report at the Planning Commission that Norman Bunn was there with Emmanuel Emmanuel Bible Church, which I believe is on Butler Road.
Mhm.
Was there any particular concerns that he expressed during that, or was it just a matter of he wanted this because he knows that the change is coming his way?
He happened to be there for another item, but was interested when he saw this on the agenda. And when he heard about it during the meeting, he went ahead during the public hearing and stood up and said, "No, this sounds great. These are the things that the city's kind of been telling us, but it'll be great to have it actually in writing in the code." He was very supportive of it.
My other question relates to under legal nonconforming sites and lots. It says, as the site or buildings are expanded, landscaping and parking must be brought into compliance in a proportionate manner. What would be the definition of compliance for landscaping and parking?
Generally, that applies to like if you're doing an addition. So if you're adding an addition, normally you're going to bring in, you're going to update the parking for that addition or the landscaping that might be directly associated with the addition. So that's what that refers to.
It doesn't get into, or does it get into the number of bushes and plants and trees that you have to?
And because non-conformities are so
Non-conformative?
different from one to the next, it's sometimes difficult to kind of quantify that. And so this is where it just takes more of a determination from one case to the next.
That's all the questions I have, Chairman.
I did have one, and probably more to do with my lack of knowledge and experience around this stuff, but one of the things is we say change in ownership of non-conforming uses are allowed. Why wouldn't we take that as an opportunity to address some of those things? Or
We see that a lot with businesses that change ownership, and traditionally that's been allowed. So we were not looking to necessarily upset that apple cart here, and that's why the language is the way it is.
but it is something that potentially is done or could be done.
Well, typically that's not focused around ownership. It's focused around usage. And that's where the ownership may change from time to time, but the usage was remaining consistent.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah, what he said. That's right.
It's good for me.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we send a full council amendment to the Mauldin zoning ordinance establishing regulations for non-conforming uses, structures, sites, lots, and signs.
Second.
I have a motion and a second discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Come to our second public comment opportunity. None online. Very good. Committee concerns. Are there any committee concerns? All right. None there as well. We'll hear an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion on that? None? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned at 6:20. Play hooky and then you play hooky and it's like we don't even know each other.
I know you are. I know you are.
It is 6:20 PM, April the 1st. I call to order the Public Works Committee. I have Mr. Reynolds and Ms. King with me today. All right, public comments. Do we have any public comment? Public Works. Please state your name and address.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Randy Eskridge. I live at 211 Springvale Drive in the Holly Springs subdivision. I'm here because I've had sewer issue and have had much dialogue with Seth and Matthew, of which they have both been most helpful to me, and I really appreciate their efforts. My sewer line runs into the city naturally. Underneath the street on Springvale Drive, it's about 6 to 8 feet out into the street. And according to Seth, I'm correct, it's about 6 to 8 feet down also. Is that correct? Okay, it's underneath the street. Right where the connection is to the city, or maybe 6 to 8 inches, Matthew and I were talking, he said, if you say a foot, you'll be good. About this far back, terracotta pipe has deteriorated. It is toast. There are roots coming in. It's clear now. It's running in there, but it's got to be fixed. After doing research, I find there's no consistency in any municipality in South Carolina where sewer concerns are. Some do, some don't, some will, some won't. My thing is, I've had Roto-Rooter come out and they sent the camera down through it. And Seth and Matthew, I've sent the information to them. It shows exactly where it goes. The terracotta pipe is shot. It's got to be fixed. One way or the other, it's got to be fixed. What I would like to see happen, I don't want to tear the street up. Street looks good. Matthew agrees with me. Seth agrees with me. However, to do it right, the street's got to be dug up. If Roto-Rooter does it, they've got to get permits and they've got to do all their stuff. My comment to Seth was, as good a manpower as we've got in this city, the equipment and everything, nobody could do it better as far as digging up the street than Public Works. I know, since even though it's under the street, on my side, it's my responsibility. Whether we could work out a deal where I'd actually pay the city to fix it, or if the city could come out and would agree to coming out and digging up and where I could get to the terracotta pipe to replace it, have it replaced myself and have the city furnish the labor to put it back. I don't know. I'm asking. I'm here on a mission. I don't know whether it's possible. Number one, it's got to be fixed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's got to be fixed. And I'm probably on borrowed time now, Seth. I guess, it is local. I'm asking, is there anything the committee, Public Works can do to kind of help me out a little bit? Because it's going to cost me a substantial amount of money, but I would appreciate anything you could do, and I'll kind of leave it in your hands now. Thank you.
Thank you. And
These two guys, I really do mean it. They've helped me. Matthew has sent the trucks out, and he showed from the city side just how far it is. Seth has worked with me, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
to be clear, we're not, it's not a back and forth discussion. So that's why we're not responding to you. We're not being rude. It's just not, this is not a back and forth discussion during the public comment piece. We're not being rude is what I'm saying. Thank you. All right. Any other public comments? All right. What do I hear on reading and approval of minutes?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Motion?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. It is approved. All right, reports and communications from city officers. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Just a kind of summary, some of the last things we've done in the month. Or if you may have not noticed, we did have to take some trees down behind behind City Hall here due to address some of the lighting issues. Over the weekend, if you didn't notice, you're driving up today, City Hall got a brand new roof. So, no more leaks. It was a part of an insurance settlement with the hailstorm last year, and it was the last one of the public facilities or city facilities to be addressed. As far as the crews go, today was double route sanitation because of the holidays. Street, stormwater, sewer, the guys are, it is, in parks with the turn of the weather, everyone is go, go, go. We are absolutely slammed and we will continue to be. I'm going to bring before you tonight two items that we need to discuss as part of my communications. Mr. Eskridge just spoke about one of them. Historically, the city of Mauldin has always operated under the understanding that the sewer mains and manholes are the only components of its wastewater collection system. Laterals are the responsibility of the homeowners. We've had some issues, with people contesting that and exploring what we can and can't do. And while Seth and I, who are still relatively new to the whole Mauldin game, started digging into it, it turns out that our city ordinances are pretty vague. You have to kind of pick a couple parts of different sections to get to that same understanding that the services aren't ours. In Greenville County, Fountain Inn, Simpsonville, Mauldin, Rewa, pretty much have the same mentality with services that services start at the main and go all the way to somebody's house. And if there's a problem with it, it's the responsibility of the homeowner. Metro Connects is the only one in the county that accepts the services, and the services go from the property line to the main. In pretty much every other municipality I've worked at, that's the model, is that it's in the city's right away, it's in the city's road, it's the city's property. But that is not what our ordinances or our policy or history in the city actually are. So Seth and I were discussing how to resolve this issue, independent of Mr. Eskridge here. And one of the things that we came up with was an idea to amend the ordinances to provide clarification for the ownership of laterals. And so I'm standing here before you tonight looking for direction, or if you tell me not to do it, not to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, no, I think this is one of those issues that it bothers me immensely that the way we would approach it is have a plumber cut into a street, dig down to our sewer, then we require them, I'm assuming we would have building and zoning back involved in making sure that they're permitted and coming back, and a lot of times they'll do cold patch. I guess we wouldn't
We don't
allow
allow
that. We
cold
wouldn't allow
patching.
cold patching.
So we have to visually verify the repairs, and then the encroachment permit stipulates how the road needs to be put back.
Yeah. what would be, did I understand your normal, what you would normally expect is from lateral to property line to be the municipality's responsibility? That's normally what you would expect?
That is correct.
So in this particular situation or under that, if it's proven that it's at the terracotta pipe, at the main, at the lateral, then the city would be going in and fixing.
That is if we were to change how we do things.
Okay.
All right, and I'm not standing here today to recommend making any changes. This is just to get the discussion started. I identified there's only one organization in Greenville County that does do it that way. Their rates are significantly higher.
Okay.
You know, we just went through a rate change of sewer. We do still have the lowest rates in the county. We're proud of that. We do as much as we can for what they are. Taking on something like that is a costly endeavor.
Yeah. It has always struck me as odd is that the plumber in new sewer tie-ins would be responsible for road repair, road cut-ins and stuff like that. So I'd be curious with the rest of the committee, kind of where you would suggest moving forward with it. But I do think it'd be wise to have some consistency with our ordinance so that we're not picking one direction or the other. Let's clarify it and say, this is where we would stand on this.
Right. And the last monkey wrench in the whole conversation is that in 2019, the South Carolina Department of Transportation issued their new utilities accommodation manual. And part of that utilities accommodation manual, it stipulates that if the DOT comes in and does any work on a SCDOT road, all of the infrastructure underneath the DOT road, in this case, like for us, sewer, would then have to become our responsibility. So as it stands, Butler Road, those individual property owners own their laterals all the way down the road. The second Build a Better Butler is done, every single lateral is now owned by the city of Mauldin. And so when we talk about, clarifying in our ordinances, we also have to take into account when dealing with DOT roadways, that the stipulation is, it is your own, you do own the lateral. So language like that would be worked into the ordinance.
Okay. Law of unintended consequences. Okay.
Kind of agree with Michael. The idea of a third party cutting into our roads bothers me immensely. Because we have to, not saying that you can't have somebody who does a very good job. And I know that we would inspect. Just seems odd for us to do that. I'm not sure if I could really give you advice right now. I'd like some time to think on it. Mr. Reynolds, would you like?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same, I would need to look at the current ordinance and then perhaps give more direction, but at minimum, it sounds like that's what we need to do. Look at the ordinance and clean it up, so to speak, and have those definitions in there so that it's clear. And whatever that looks like and this committee and council decides on, then so be it. But that's what I'm hearing anyway, that we do need to address the ordinance itself. Because it's not, this isn't going to be the last time we hear of this.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. And Matthew, how many would you estimate sewer lateral encroachment permits have we issued for this exact reason to contractors in the last year?
Handful.
A handful, but it is a consistent requirement that we've had. I think what we could do is formulate two options. Option to establish a new responsibility and where that responsibility lays, or clarifying language in the ordinance that stipulates that it is not our responsibility. Because unfortunately, the language is vague to the point that the default is to not to, and that's been the historical precedent. So the clarity options would be clarity to then create that authority that the city is responsible from the property line or the lateral to the main, or the inverse, that the city is not responsible from those two designations or thereabouts. And then also, what is that fiscal impact look like? Because those are two very different fiscal pictures. But we thought this was an important enough topic to bring to the committee to begin that discussion, to make you aware, because I know we've had commenters both at committee and at council meeting recently that had expressed a concern as to why the city is not doing XYZ work because they felt that it should have been the city's responsibility. So we know that everyone had seen that. So we wanted to kind of say, hey, we're looking at this too, and start off the conversation by saying, if y'all feel like it's worth us researching more, that's what we're going to do, and bring back some ideas at a preceding meeting or subsequent.
One of the things too, that as we discuss future on the stormwater issue, we're stating one of the things we're looking at is saying we shouldn't be working on public property. I mean, private property. It's almost like the opposite doing here. So we probably need some clarity in general. Well, where we do work, where we don't work.
Yeah.
So I mean, timing of that is, we need to do make things and make it very clear that there's no ambiguity. This is what we do, this is what we don't. I'm gonna have to think on it exactly on that, but leaning one way, but I want to have some time to think on it. All right, anything else?
We'll go into much greater detail as we move along. The second item tonight is bulk trash pickup. So our solid waste ordinance basically doesn't describe bulk, right? It's just a kind of a ancillary service that we provided when we had inmates and rear loading trash trucks. As we transition to the sidearms, we attempted to implement what the city of Greenville does for their bulk pickup. City of Greenville stipulates that if you want it picked up and it meets this criteria, you can call and schedule and we'll pick it up. It hasn't gone over real well. And so we've basically pulled back and punted on that idea and reworked to the point where we're just putting an extra truck out and running the city to pick up bulk. It's apparently a very important service to a lot of people. And any control or regulation of it has bit us pretty bad at Public Works.
And you're just defining bulk. I have my mind. What is
So bulk is going to be any
GDC?
So non-construction materials. So I'm talking couches, mattresses, bed springs, dressers, toilets. Yes, white goods.
And the metal, I know when we get that, we actually get that recycled. So that's
Yeah. So if it's metal, I mean, we don't mind the water heaters and all that. I mean, it's recycle and easy going. With bulk, you can look at it several ways. One way is that, we used to have paid laborers. Now we just have paid drivers. These things are heavy. They're not, OSHA recommends not lifting anything over 50 pounds unless you have a second person there to help you. When you start talking about huge dressers and pull-out couches and stuff like that, we just don't have the staffing with the current workload and sanitation to put out riders on the back. So we're actually doing it with one of the old knuckle booms. And that way we minimize any potential liability to the individual working.
I'm trying to remember the exact history on this, but we had stopped doing that at one point, didn't we? Or did we just said it was just the construction material we stopped?
And construction materials always been no-go because a landfill is a permitted activity, and as everything goes to twin chimneys, certain materials have to go to certain places in that landfill or they get in trouble with state and federal governments. And so construction materials are called C&D, and they go to a specialized area, just like hazardous waste goes to a specialized area. It's all still a trash dump, but it's just different areas for the waste at the trash dump. So we've never allowed construction materials, but we do white goods. And like I said, as a means to just kind of better control it and organize it, we tried the call-in schedule.
The other challenge we have is that the ordinance on residential pickup does not address bulk, but it is listed as a permitted activity under commercial. And so the whole ordinance probably needs to be drafted to be more consistent with practices and our expectation of services that we're going to deliver. But the residential pickup does not address or does not speak of bulk, but it does on the commercial side.
I think it does say you can't, no construction materials. right?
But yeah, that's a different element. So yeah.
So it does define some things we don't pick up.
Yes.
this
But
was-
on a residential side, the ordinance as it's written only allows for your waste to be in 1 or 2 trash cans at the curb, not next to it, not a couch next to it. Our solid waste ordinance only allows for your waste to be in your trash can.
So on the drop back and punt, because the calling and scheduling wasn't working, is that because you think the residents just didn't know to do that? That they just assumed that their bulk items would mysteriously disappear off the side of the road? I mean, or do you
We just
have an
got,
inkling as to why it didn't work?
we,
Because
you know, we,
personally, I mean, that's what even that's what we would do. We would just call and say, hey, we got. what-
right. And it was, we had an outreach. It's on the website. There's information. It's just that you're never going to be able to reach anybody. They're going to put whatever they want at the curve. And then when it's not picked up, they're going to call you or the mayor or someone else and say it's been out there for 6 months. And then Public Works ultimately looks bad.
Well, yeah. And again, I might be on that island by myself, but there's some things that I don't think is the responsibility of Public Works. And, I didn't know until recently that we picked mattresses up off the side of the road. Shame on me. I thought you had to take your own mattress to the dump. So, sounds like another ordinance that needs to be cleaned up and
Yeah. And it's going to help.
definitions saying exactly what it means.
And that's
Unfortunately, that's where
point of
we
this
are.
is to kind of start the process because we are going to have to rewrite the solid waste ordinance. There's some ambiguity when it comes to townhomes, apartments, 9 units or more, what constitutes, residential versus non-residential. We want to clean that up. We also.
To your point, yeah, I wrote down Miller the other day and there was the biggest pile. I mean, it looked like 2 apartments had been emptied and all of their belongings were sitting on the side of the road. And it was just an eyesore.
Well, that's one of the
Um,
things that we wanted to address because we run into an issue where we have apartments or something like that, and that's called like a turnout, where they've booted the person from the residence and then taken all their goods and put it at the curb. And so we really like to get some language in there that actually gives some teeth to the code enforcement. It's because, one, I understand it's picking up trash, but like when you actually have to be the guy there picking up the trash and you're seeing like their baby books and their pictures and all of their belongings, it breaks your heart. You're like, this is wrong. And so we would like to clean it up and make it clear what we can and cannot do, or should not do. So in the next few committees, we're going to be looking at bringing before you some potential changes to be discussed.
And part of that is also volumetric. There's no real, there needs to be better, clearer defined volume as far as what we will pick up and things like that versus kind of what he's talking about on the back end of those evictions where they'll dump an entire apartment out there or a house and it's all just loose trash. And yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we used to have volume on if you cut a tree down in your yard, there's a certain amount that would be picked up on an annual basis.
That's correct.
Yes, do that.
The only comment on that is I'd also know where people were like, well, they picked it up the first day when I put my rug out there or some material. Like I said, I know that Mauldin has a lot of good people out there. And if I'm going all the way to the dump and my truck's half empty and I see something in our neighborhood, I'll just throw it in the back, right? Good neighbor. Then they'll go and say, why they get it for us? They should be doing it for you. So I have to apologize when that occurs because I know I'm not the only one that does that because I've talked to several people that do the same because you feel stupid going to the dump for, a quarter of what you have in the back of your truck. And if you see something, hey, no big deal. I help the neighbor out, right?
That is especially if your truck is a Ridgeline, right? I'm sorry.
I'm going to hold my comment on that.
Sorry, Daniel.
Right. All right, on that one, any other questions? So we discussed the bulk pickup and the sewer laterals. More on that, or is that already done with that? Okay. All righty. All right, move on to unfinished business, stormwater.
All right, so as per committee's request, last time, you wanted me to bring forward something to vote on. And Mr. Chairman, so what I have before you is a agenda item where we're asking you to continue to discuss or possibly implement a stormwater fee in order to initiate a stormwater division within the Public Works Department. As background goes, we've got a big system. We've got $50-60 million worth of infrastructure. We spend about $34,000 a year in material costs maintaining it. We have contractor work with KCI where they have identified, $20 million worth of stormwater work off the right of way to deal with legacy flooding issues within the city. We have older communities that were constructed without infrastructure. And so, we do have some stormwater projects going on. My guys, myself, we went down to Bishop Heights. We went and we dug the ditches. Did a great job. We, replaced storm pipes, replaced driveway culverts, and, we did what we could to address the at least the flow of water through that area. We have a grant project going on where we're going to be doing some stream restoration on Oak Park. We can continue to address sinkholes, catch basins, repairs, catch basin inspections. The street department or street division itself has basically morphed into a stormwater division. We actually put the street activities on the back burner to address the stormwater issues. There are plenty of issues to work on, and we continue to do so. So as part of the process, we've had KCI devise a report to identify what it should cost. I reviewed the report, provided a more comprehensive report to actually identify, the thresholds that we would need to collect from residential and non-residential properties in order to operate the division like we envision, with staffing, capital investments, supplies, materials, etc. I've even gone so far as to break down the fees as it relates to certain businesses across the city, like what they currently pay, what their proposed new fee would be, and their total fee. And so the long and short is, I'm going to stand here before you and tell you this, is that if you want to continue to keep doing stormwater work, you want to be in this game, and you want to start fixing all the problems that have plagued the city for so long, we're here to do it, but you're going to have to pay for it. And so my recommendation is to move ahead with the values that I presented in my report, and that's a $36 annual fee for residences and a 37.50 charge for the ERUs, equivalent residential units for commercial businesses, with a projected revenue stream of approximately $1 million a year. This would fund the division. This would provide enough money to leverage against loans and grants. The one caveat on this is what I'm saying with my recommendation is I'm making a recommendation for you to vote on, is that do not construe my recommendation in any way whatsoever as suggesting to you that we should get into the business of working off right away in stormwater. If we want to start working on private property and addressing people's issues because their neighbor floods their backyard, we need to completely reevaluate this, and I'll write you a new report for what you really should collect if we're really going to get into that business. If we're gonna play, the rain police, we certainly need to collect a larger revenue stream. If we're going to look into investing on our infrastructure, continuing to invest in our infrastructure to mitigate flooding concerns in areas that are on state roads, our roads, and in neighborhoods, then this is the value that I recommend implementing for a stormwater fee.
with this here, and it doesn't say here, I know we had KCI do the full assessment of the city on the roads, and I think it was like $7 million just for the top 7 projects or something. I'm going by memory. It's been about a year.
It was about $20 million.
$20 million, I was thinking for the whole city is what's really needed. And that's not private property necessarily, was it? Or what?
Oh, yes. So you're talking about the Bilo Distribution Center.
Right.
That road, GBS lumber, everyone dumps through residential backyards. Actually, their recommendation on that project was not to spend the $9 million to fix it, but rather spend $750,000 to buy the affected property owners. Because there really was not you can engineer a solution, but sometimes it's not the most responsible thing to do.
It's not most economic.
Yes. In other situations, we repair, some of these things were $250,000, $300,000, some were close to $1 million. Redeveloping the Bishop Heights neighborhood was at the time 2 million and change. It's probably more like 4 now, but the rate, construction rates are going and material costs. But yeah.
And if you look, I was just looking here down at your non-residential impact. If you look at the GBS does not have any kind of, it's not a retention pond. What's it called? Where it slows the water down, doesn't retain it.
Oh, they have nothing.
Yeah, they have nothing. But what do you call, I'm trying to think of the term.
Detention pond or a
Detention pond, just a
yes.
detention pond. Compex, I can't recall if they have anything or not. They have a nice facility. I don't know if they have that. Sawyer, I don't believe does. Spectrum, I think they will after the one being built currently. I don't know if they have one now. Calitz does not. BASF, I don't know. I have no idea. If you look at these, they don't have those basic retention ponds mostly anyways, and a lot of our businesses don't because they weren't there when they built them.
Yeah, so
required.
in the case of Compex, CF Sauer, BASF, those are all permitted with industrial pre-treatment programs for both their wastewater and stormwater. So they actually capture all their on-site stormwater and they put it through their pre-treatment plant that's on-site, and that directly discharges to our collection system
Through the sewage?
through the sewage.
There's
Since
stormwater
we don't charge sewage based on volume, because we have set rates based on customer and water meter sizes. Some of these larger corporations or industrial facilities actually get to save money by using our collection system for their,
Did they do that for stormwater?
goes through their pre-treatment.
Unaware of that. First of all, any questions from you for Seth? Seth, what are our options to bring this? I mean, we're talking about potentially adding fees. What's the proper approach to do this? What are the options to bring this to council?
Sure. So as far as the entire topic or this topic or?
Yes.
Okay. So the next step, if the committee, really to implement any fee is you have to have an ordinance. So there's that. And then it's just a matter of, is this the fee structure that the committee is ultimately in favor of versus something else? Because one thing I do want to point out on that chart is that, let's just use Compex, for example. Their current stormwater fee to the county is $3,861. And under this proposal, that will now increase by $5,363 to the city, to which their stormwater fee would be $9,224. And so that's why we illustrated the impact on commercial and industrial sites in the city, because it has a significant impact on those properties. However, the benefits that we've articulated are generally speaking, and what Matthew was saying was that when we did the KCI report, we did look at 6 specific flood-prone areas, but all of those were more or less privately held responsibilities. So none of that really was in the public right of way. We articulated at a previous meeting that we estimate that we have about 50 million in liability across the city in the public right of way. And that's what Mr. Flaman's proposing that we focus on, not the private property and converting private property infrastructure into public property infrastructure. Because in addition to those 6, we have several neighborhoods that have stormwater systems that were originally built in, but are showing signs of failure at this point. Pine Forest comes to mind. So what we're looking at is if the committee wants to move forward an idea that a fee is appropriate, then what we could do is create an ordinance that would be required, and an ordinance would need to be passed by council in order for that fee to be implemented in whatever case, however we want to do it, whether it's on the tax bill or there is another collection system, method of collection, and that could be on the utility bills that we do with Greenville Water Sewer. You can add a stormwater fee there too.
So to move this to full council to get let's just say to get the ball rolling, at least a discussion with full council. How would that go?
So we could do that 2 ways. We could either, the committee could ask for an ordinance that would specify and spell out how we're going to implement this fee with a proposed budget as well. And then it can consider that and then move that to full council if it desired. Or it can move this topic of, do we want to create an ordinance for stormwater fee and move that discussion to council first? And then if council says, no, we're not interested in a stormwater fee, then we wouldn't be drafting an ordinance. Or if council says, yes, we're interested in seeing what this language and timeline and everything looks like, and then we would come back with an ordinance. But kind of based on the way we've done things to this point, I think it's probably best to have the committee ask for an ordinance to consider that would stipulate those, and then it can move that to full council if desired.
From a timeline, we'd still be waiting till next committee to have that ordinance to go through to go to full council.
Right, because we don't have a draft ordinance tonight.
Versus if we put this in for discussion with full council in the next full council meeting, we could have the discussion to know, is there even appetite with the rest of council to do this?
Yeah, and then we could have the ordinance ready for
Then we'd
the
have
committee in May.
it's after.
Yep.
I was gonna put, my personal opinion would be I'd like to have full council and have a discussion about this to determine if we even want to go, if we want to have the appetite to do this. That's where I'm at. I don't know if there's any motion or any more discussion about this.
I'll comment on it a little, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, this is one that I've struggled with. I've talked about it. I've been pretty vocal about where I stand on it and how concerned I am with the idea of getting into a business that is a flood is concerning. Nothing I see here makes me feel better about it. Starting a new division doesn't make me feel better about it. Starting a $700,000 revenue enhancement for the city to help fund a division that will help address it doesn't make me feel better about it, because I look at the two and think those numbers are really, really, really far apart. This doesn't even look like something that looks like a long game to me. You know, if it's something I can look at and so, you know, strategically, how do we start biting this off? I don't know that I agree with the idea that, like an elephant, that this is far larger than an elephant, megalodon, whatever, name something gargantuan. This is way bigger. And I have a lot of concern with sending the city down a road that I frankly feel a lot like it's door 1, 2, and 3, and you know they're all really bad. I have a lot of concern with this, Mr. Chairman. Again, what we're talking about doesn't address where a lot of our issues are, and that's private right of way. I don't know. I'd be much more in tune with having the Public Works Department continue what they're doing. I think there's been a tremendous amount of work put into assessing where we're at and trying to enhance what we have now. You know, as I look at it, I'd like to see how does that look in 4 months, 6 months, et cetera. You know, doing something like cleaning ditches that's not been done. How does that affect it? Well, we can clean dishes without a new fee and a new division and as I look at it, if we start a division that says this is a stormwater division, you've just hooked on to right now, today's number, $50 million. I think you've taken on the idea that, because whether or not you intended or not, the public's going to say, well, I'm getting charged for this and my backyard's still flooding. And we have to sit there and have the same argument that we have. That's your backyard. It's not ours. We're working on the public right away. This is the definition of albatross to me, and it concerns me greatly.
One of the issues I have, we have more water coming than we do now. New construction, we're downhill. The mayor always says water don't run uphill. We got more coming. What we're talking about is public property, and I do agree that we need to avoid this private talk. Maybe we could put a grant for some folks that have some issues, and maybe we can help like a grant, little grant fee that they can apply for each year. And when it's gone kind of thing, situation. But it ain't gonna get better. It's gonna get worse, far worse. And there is nobody else to do it. So how do we address it? How do we do it? And that's why I wanted to have the full, I want to know what's the appetite of every member of council on the record, say, this is what concerns them. This is what the issue is. And we're very clear on it. Everybody knows where everybody's at. And then move forward from there. And let's have that discussion. I know the mayor, myself have really been working to try and do this. I think I have to agree. A lot of the stuff that's being done is good. Was way overdue, which is part of the problem we have, why we have this problem. Ditches that are now flat, or, they have nice yards on them that don't collect water anymore. A lot of things, the new curbs, I think are very successful. I think there's ways, we're not gonna be able to fix the problem. We can try and make it better. How we do that, I think, needs to be a discussion, like I said, a full council. Because part of me says I want to recommend this. Part of me says I want to hear what everybody else has to say. Other part of me says, well, where can we cut some corners? Where can we save some money? Other places to generate this. But I think it needs to be discussion. It needs to be discussed in council. That's kind of where
Well, as Michael stated, I think I've been vocal about this as well. And Mr. Reynolds, you put it perfectly. I don't feel any better about door 1, 2, or 3 either. My biggest, as the mayor would say, rub would be the non-residential impact. I just cannot support what's in front of me today with that piece in there. I mean, that's just, we've worked too hard to be business friendly. And to me, that's just a reverse move. I don't know what the answer is. The private property seems to be a lot of what we hear of as council members. And, that's a road we can't go down, or I don't think we can go down. There's not enough money being printed for that. Well, that's a discussion for another day, printing money. So I don't know. That's where I am. I just have a lot of heartburn on this. And as presented, I'm just not a fan of it.
And on this, that's where the other reason, like I said, I'd like to have the discussion with council. Because if you look here at the fees and we say, okay, non-residential, that's the issue that council has. What else can we do there? Do we reduce it? Do we maybe look at a smaller pot? That's why I want that conversation. I will look at like I said, a lot of these, they don't have retention ponds. We said, all right, I'll pick on, let's say Sawyer, right? Big company, they don't have retention ponds. Say, all right, you're gonna have to do this now for stormwater. I guarantee you it'll probably be more than $50,000 to build that stormwater, over 10 years. And if I was them, I'd rather pay, just speaking for myself, I'd rather pay that than have to try and put a retention pond and deal with it. But with that being said, there's a lot of smaller companies. I mean, that could be a hot dog lunch for their entire, their business. I mean, they're working on different numbers. You get your smaller businesses though, and that's the thing that you don't necessarily see. We see the bigger companies, but what's it do to Mauldin biscuits, or not Maverick biscuits? What does that look like? What is that fee looking like? Is that $25? Is that $1,000? So some of those I think we need to look at. Because these are all relatively large areas. Cowlitz is a pretty big, with their side parking lots, pretty big piece of land they have. And definitely if you look at, and it makes sense why compacts, they have a great big, beautiful piece of land there. Makes sense why theirs is so large, so high, is because they got a big piece of land. Like I said, I would like to have this discussion so we can get feedback to the department, and just so we have feedback from the council and say, here's where we go. It may be continue what we're at, but that's where I stand.
One quick question on the for Mr. Fleeman, on the industrial piece. I mean, could we technically require detention ponds if they're if they're cleaning their water and putting it through the sewer system, as you stated on those 3 locations? I mean, it seems to me they're doing what? You don't have to answer that. I mean, to me, that's another question out
We have the
there.
authority, but I feel like we could work with other governing agencies to pressure it if it was necessary.
Well, I'm not saying that's necessary. I was just wondering if that, because they do go that extra step to clean that water.
I think, Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't KCI talking about a system of credits and things where if you do take certain measures to improve your quality or volume, you get credits back on what you pay? But I mean, so there is a system to kind of encourage the post development, redevelopment to include more stormwater. And I think that the biggest thing that we always have to remember when it comes to stormwater is it's really about two things: moving water off of roadways, and second is water quality for downstream users. And it's not for flood prevention as a primary purpose. And that's, but at the end of the day, this is something that's not going to solve itself, and we will have to figure out how to address it at a reasonable and responsible manner for the funding that we have available. Because there's a substantial public right-of-way need that we will have to continue to maintain. And then some of these other larger, bigger problems that will be asked of us. So.
And again, to your point, I ask the question all the time because it seems to me that the definition of stormwater and flooding seems to become combined, and they're 2 different animals. And we need to remember that.
When I think along those same lines, Miss King is just one of those, I'll take like streets, for instance, because we do some streets, we do all streets. And so how many times have we had to sit and say, look, that's not our street. Here's what we've done for our streets. Explain that with water and rain.
Well, I mean, it boils down, I mean, the whole goal is to stormwater, as he said, is a couple different things. I've actually filled out a corporate Form R and signed my name. And I'll tell you, they're very painful. It's the EPA. I have to get to count the number of pallets you have out back because they got nails and rust might go downstream. It's a very intensive trying to capture what that is, figuring your rainfall, square footage of your roof, how much flows down, where it goes, what water basin goes. It's very detailed. And the first time is the worst. After that, you can copy and paste because it's very similar. But the first one is a couple weeks of my life I will never get back. So that's the one piece of it. And what she said, that's the corporate, that's what they're looking at, because they don't want pollution in our rivers, essentially, right? We're limited. Stormwater, those also, when we go to the county goes and they say, hey, we've got a new apartment complex. How are you going to keep your water? Basically, the goal of that is to and it's different. We have a higher standard here in Mauldin, but it's what land was there before, the trees, the grass, everything there. Now you're replacing it with pavement and houses. You don't have the trees in the way. So you try and get that water to, in theory, it's better than this, but the same amount of water would leave that property than it would have before. That's kind of the goal. We put multipliers on that, but engineers usually do a lot more than what we ask. But that's kind of that's the piece of stormwater we're really addressing with the flooding. is that volume coming out. A lot of the new neighborhoods, like I said, the one outside of Knollwood, I actually went through the drawings. It was way more than we even asked for. But they also had to buy that land. That land was a gift as far as that too, because of the way they could build that. It just, they were able to, do much more than we asked. Other properties, smaller properties are gonna have a hard time. It's because you don't have the land to get that. So it goes back and forth. We're talking here, is we're saying, if you, at the very least, the city should be responsible for the ditches and around our streets. We own the streets. We should own those ditches. We don't even have a funding mechanism technically for that because, or the manpower, because we're taking from the streets to do this. It's something that, to be honest, should have been done for the last, since Mauldin existed. We should have had, making sure our ditches were cleaned out and our current, what we currently had was there. Then right now we'd be talking about how do we make things better and what are how we could do things better. We haven't even gotten the maintenance done because we don't have those resources. And like I said, again, I'd like to have everybody talk about it, but that's what Matt's trying to do. But to do that, he's had to take people off the street, off the streets to, that shouldn't be, probably the wrong way to say that, but the street crews are working on stormwater instead of repairing the streets. Doing it, they're juggling. There is no fee mechanism for this. There's no fee really for the county. The county's fees, what they collect is for the EPA I mean, if you've seen the maps that they do, they're very extensive, where water goes from where. That's what they do. And they make sure that new construction is going to meet the standards, right? That's what they have. There's no real fee for the upstate. Simpsonville is looking at what we do. Fountain Inn is, I've talked to council members from both of those last summer. They went from, we're not going to touch this, to, all right, we got to do something because the water's coming for them too. And they're getting more and more problems. So this is something we can't just not do anything. And I'd really like to see what where they want to go with this. Of course, I'd like to hear the mayor's soliloquy about what we should be doing. So on that. Not their full amic pentameter, so.
I'll just add one final thing, and Mr. Reynolds, he mentioned it earlier, but the last committee meeting, when we discussed this, I stated that I would like to have a period of time to evaluate now that Bishop Heights, as you stated, it was just the ditches were cleaned. We're doing the curbing, 6 months from now, what does that look like? And where are we? And what are our needs then?
I mean, you think if we cleaned all the ditches and built all the curbs, we would fix this problem?
No, we're not going to fix the problem.
Every stormwater system is designed to fail.
100
Law of engineering, and it is unlike any of the other aspects. Every storm pipe you put in the ground, every catch basin will fail because no matter how hard you try, you cannot predict what rain is going to fall.
And with that, every 100-year flood only happens a couple times a year. All right, do I hear any motions? Seth, can I make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This time I would like to make a motion to send for discussion to full council where we move forward with stormwater, what the appetite of the full council is.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Right. Please.
My only discussion would be that it is just that, it's for discussion only.
I have the discussion noted.
For discussion only at full council.
A discussion, can I have potential recommendation? Do we need, do I need to?
So
say
the motion I took down was a motion to forward this for discussion. But anytime anything is on an agenda
recommendation?
at a council meeting, council can pursue any course it desires.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Didn't get my eye in. I'll go with y'all.
All right. All right, so the ayes have it. This will move to full council for discussion. Thank you. All right, what do we have next? Where are we? I'm not, almost there.
I need this one
Almost
one
there.
more.
Nice try. Public comment.
No. We
Business.
have,
We
we
have
have a new
ordinance.
business.
Oh, we do.
Chair, we have a new
Oh, yeah, okay, yes, you're correct. See, I'm jumping the gun too.
Yeah, so I think it was 2 meetings ago, I brought forth an ordinance to sell some property on Butler. I believe it was the stuff in front of City Hall here. DOT's working its way down Butler Road with its appraiser. So what we have before you is an ordinance to sell 2 parcels. The 2 parcels in question would be all of the road frontage at City Park. This would be allowed for the widening to allow for the 10-foot multi-purpose path. And then the second parcel would be right at the bridge. If you ever got down the bridge where it crosses Gilder Creek, Pavon's on your left, all that like floodland on your right, we own all that. So they want to move the bridge further to the north. And so they're looking to acquire a part of that tract of land. And like I said, a part of the road frontage along Butler Road at City Park. And so what I'm asking here, they provided valuations. Obviously, the value of City Park was far more valuable than swamplands, unfortunately. But we've reviewed these appraisals. We sent it to the attorneys. They've looked over everything. It's par for the course as part of this Build a Better Butler program. All in all, for the swath of land that we're gonna sell, we're gonna clear north of $50,000 and establish new right of ways. So I'm looking to, I recommend that the committee advances this ordinance to sell the 2 tracks. I think we identified them as track 205 and 229 to sell these, a portion of these properties and their right of way to the South Carolina Department of Transportation. So I recommend that you approve this and move it to council for a final vote and mayor's signature.
And
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, and it also authorizes additional temporary construction easements. But neither one will interrupt the current operations of City Park. So we have operations on.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to forward to full council with a recommendation of approval of the sale of the properties listed to SCDOT, listed in your packet as track 205 and 229. This is all part of the Build a Better Butler project SCDOT has. Funds received will be $51,112.
Have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second, well stated, Mr. Reynolds.
I think I covered it all.
All right, any discussion? Only discussion I'd say is 150 years ago, they used to say Florida was nothing but swampland. So maybe that value will go up someday. But
And the valuation really, I mean, when you look at the floodplain maps, I mean, everything is in the floodplain. You can't build on it.
all right. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign? The ayes have it. Moves on to full council.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note that we'll have 2 more of these coming
Okay.
in due time. We're come back.
Okay. All right, public comments. All right. No one and no one online, correct? I forgot to ask that earlier. All right, what do I hear? Oh, committee concerns. All right, what do I hear on adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye, we are adjourned.
Immediately following, we have a special called session. All right, chop chop, guys. Staff's ready to go. Thank you.
April.
Yeah, I was equating you with Shakespeare.
This is true.
Ready? Good to go. I will call to order for the special called city council meeting on April the 1st, 2024. Let the record reflect that all council members are present, along with our city administrator, our city clerk, city attorney, and various members of the audience. Thank you for being here. First item on our agenda would be the invocation pledge of allegiance. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you'd bow with me. Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for how you continue to bless each and every one of us. We thank you for how you watch over us, and we look for you to guide us in this meeting and others. I ask that you give us wisdom, that you help us to be respectful of one another, and we just come out of Easter recognizing your sovereign grace. We recognize how you've provided for all of our needs, and we just pray, Father, as we grow as a city, as we grow as people, that we grow closer to you in that process. And again, we just recognize how you have provided for our need, and ask for wisdom and grace as we do the city's business here tonight. In your name I pray, amen. Stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. We've got the welcome backwards. Ditto. Only item before us is new business for consideration of a motion for executive session. I believe this is an economic development matter, so I would defer to Chair Matney.
Thank you, Mayor. Move we enter executive session to consider an economic development matter pursuant to section 30-4-70A2.
Thank you, Mr. Matney. Have motions there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Reynolds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion for exec session, say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Hearing none, we will go into executive session approximately 7:23. All right, we will reconvene in council chambers at approximately 8:47 PM. Mr. Matney, would you report out?
Thank you, Mayor. Coming out at 8:49. No decisions were made, no votes were taken.
Sir, next item, public comment. Anyone online? Because there's nobody in the audience. Okay. Council request. Hear none, adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Path, and that was Mark. No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 8:49.
That's one I wish they could both lose.
Seriously, I don't know which one, but I still.
Thank you, Daniel.